Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Ian here from IBI Performance Coaching, and today we're going to be talking about why the habits that you know will help you reach your goal just don't seem to stick. Let me start this conversation with an example that may be familiar to more of you than you might imagine. I was talking with a client earlier today, and he mentioned how he had committed to do a certain number of workouts the week prior. He'd committed to a certain approach to his diet, and he had gotten, let's say, 70% of that, but then he had just chosen to not follow through and complete the entire commitment that he had made. And so that would be like a perhaps micro, maybe macro example of what we're talking about here. And the mondo being bigger than macro example would be starting a habit and having it go for even a week or a couple weeks. And then you find that you just start forgetting it. You just start deciding it's not that important to you anymore and it disappears. And I'm sure we've all had that example. Well, I'm going to focus to begin with on the micro example of this because this is the example that he brought up, and it's one that I have personally experienced and uh, done battle with in my own life, and I've heard it from other clients as well. So I know that it's more common than people might think, and that is doing the dishes and then leaving one or two of them in the sink undone. You do all of them, but you leave one or two. And it seems completely irrational. Why not just do all of them? What's the reason to not finish the job? And look, the way you do anything is the way you do everything, right? The inside is just a reflection of the outside, is just a reflection of the inside. They are co-determinative, they're interdependent, they create one another. The micro creates the macro, and the macro creates the micro. All of these things are true. So the dish example, and if you're someone who does this, hopefully this is going to really resonate with you. The dish example is the same thing as committing to do a certain number of workouts and leaving the tail end off, not completing them, is the same thing as starting a habit and stopping the habit just short of it actually becoming reaching the level of automaticity. All right, so why do we do this? I'm going to talk about something called self-worth theory, which is a very interesting psychological theory that I think really explains this well. And to do that, I'm going to use a different example. The one that we're probably all familiar with. If we haven't done it, we've certainly seen it, or we've seen it in movies or something like that. I want you to imagine some students sitting outside the classroom just before a big test. What are they talking about? What kind of things might they be saying? Almost certainly, some of them will be saying something to the tune of, "Oh, I didn't study enough," or "Oh, I really didn't study at all for this test," or that's something like that. Very few of them will be saying, "I really gave studying for this test my best effort. I really committed to it. I really did everything that I could." Much more common to hear the I only had an hour or two to study or something like that. Why would they be saying that? Okay, self-worth theory postulates that we are very deeply concerned with our own sense of worth, connected to status in our perceived groups, and that there are actually two kinds of self-worth. There's contingent and non-contingent. Contingent being the kind of self-worth that is connected to achievement, accomplishment. And that's what we're talking about in this test example. So why would the students be saying that they didn't study as much as they should have? Well, play it out. Game theory. They go in, they take the test. They get a very good score on the test. Well, now what does that mean for their contingent self-worth? Well, it means that they're more talented, they're smarter, they're more capable than other people. They didn't have to study very much and they still got a very good score, right? Hey, win. Okay, what about the other side? What if they go in and they get a bad score on the test? Well, by claiming that they haven't prepared enough for it, they are sparing their sense of self worth because they can always say, well, I could have done better if I had prepared more for the test. It gives their self worth an exit, an evacuation route, a way to escape the implications of not having done well on the test. It's not that they were inept; it's that they were underprepared, and had they wanted to prepare more, had they prioritized it more, they would have done better. So it's essentially a no lose situation for their sense of self worth. But of course, uh, what often happens is they actually end up not. It's not just that they're saying they didn't prepare that much, because internally they would know that how much they had prepared. So often we will under prepare for something. I'm reminded of an interview that the MMA fighter John Jones did about a fight that he had that was famously very close when no one thought it was going to be close, and he was saying that he had been out in the clubs, doing cocaine like the week a couple days prior to this fight, and what he said was something like, "That way, if the fight didn't go my way, if I lost the fight, I had a ready-made excuse." And so that's what we do. We underprepare on purpose so that we can preserve our sense of self-worth. But obviously, at the cost of actually accomplishing more, actually achieving more, actually reaching our goals. Okay, so let's bring this back to the building of habits. Well, if you were to follow through with your commitments, if you were to really make a new habit automatic, would that potentially increase your sense of self worth? It certainly could, your contingent self worth. But at the risk of, what if you did all that work to make the habit, to instill the habit, and then you still let it fall off, or it didn't work for you, or even if it did work for you, there are a whole lot of risks to your self worth there, because if the more work you put into building a habit, the greater the fall. You're building yourself up so that if things don't go your way, you're falling from a much higher place and it hurts that much more. Conversely, let's say you don't fall, but what you've done is you've built yourself up to a place where you now are performing at a higher standard. You thus have higher expectations for yourself. And perhaps even more importantly, or equally importantly, the people around you, people whose opinions you care about, have higher expectations for you. And that can be terrifying. It's a lot easier when people don't expect much from you. And very often we behave so that we can preserve that order of things, because fewer expectations or lower expectations on us just are more comfortable. It makes things easier. There's less of a risk to our self-worth. There's nowhere to go. You're already at a low level. All right. So this is why we don't follow through with habits. We unconsciously sabotage ourselves. It's why we don't follow through with commitments. It's why we self-sabotage when we set a goal and we just get close, and then the closer we get, the scarier it becomes, and our fear of success is greater than our fear of failure, because at least by failing, we can maintain the status quo and we have less to lose in the future potentially. It's also why we don't do all the dishes, so we don't finish the dishes. Because if you expect yourself to finish the dishes every time now because you finished them that time before, well, what if you fail? Now you've lost your successful dish doer identity. It sounds absurd, but honestly, this is the way our subconscious often functions. What can we do about this? Let's get to solutions here. Well, this is all contingent self-worth that we're talking about. So the real solution, the long-term solution here, has to do with building up your non-contingent self-worth. your sense of your own value that does not depend on achievement and accomplishment. All right. What can we do to accomplish this? One would be meeting your own failures with kindness. Okay. Rather than shaming yourself, rather than being hard on yourself, people you may think that it is cool or tough or manly, whatever, positively valenced adjective you want to apply to being very hard on yourself. You can be hard on yourself by setting challenging standards for yourself. But if for some reason you fail to live up to them, shaming yourself does not improve your chances of succeeding in the future. It makes you more scared of the potential failures that come with trying. So be kind to yourself. Recognize what it was that you did well. Focus a lot on that. Where did you succeed? And then look for the environmental factors that served as obstacles or challenges to you achieving what you needed, and remove those. What is it that's keeping you from already doing what it is that you should be doing? Get those out of the way. Okay, so over time, you build this up through being kind to yourself. You build it up by recognizing that your status in the eyes of those whose opinions you most care about is not contingent upon achievement and accomplishment. With any luck, you should have relationships, whether they're familial relationships, romantic relationships, whether they're, relationships with friends. And friends are probably the best place to look for this kind of support. That even when you fail, you're not reduced in their eyes. Your value as a person isn't reduced in their eyes. And this might take some going out on a limb. It might take some faith. It might take some courage. Almost certainly you will. But that's how you build this up over time. It can also be treated by really engaging with the process. So let's use the dishes example. Rather than focusing on getting the dishes washed, focusing on the act of washing the dishes. Doing that a little bit slower than you might normally, a little bit more mindfully. Imagine that you are, being televised around the world in the dishwashing championships. Not so much, a race to get them done, but the person who does them to the highest degree, with the greatest degree of skill and finesse and grace. Okay, so focusing on this process and engaging with it. Dishes might be a silly example, but to be honest, there's no reason that dishwashing can't be just as enjoyable as any other activity. It really depends on how you use your attention. And if you engage with the process, you forget about the potential cost of failure that we're talking about here. And this could go just as well with committing to something like a diet, committing to something like exercise. The people who continue exercising are the people who learn to enjoy exercising, not those who hate the way that they look, or hate the way that they feel, or hate that they don't have big biceps or something like that. It's the people who learn to enjoy the process of exercise are the ones that really stick to it. Okay. Next, you're going to be looking for signs of or proof of progress rather than proof of concept. Proof of concept is results. Proof of progress can be all sorts of things. It can be maybe instead of giving up your new habit after a week and a half of using it, this time you allowed the habit to fall off at the 2-week mark. So in terms of proof of concept, that would still be considered a failure, but it's proof of progress because you stuck with it a bit longer, right? You were a bit more committed. So looking for proof of progress and focusing on how you are making incremental progress is going to give you more of that. And finally, awareness is a huge element here. This guy that I was talking to about the dishes, he asked whether what I thought about mindfulness. And my response was, mindfulness is a key component to this. And not, it doesn't have to be meditation or anything like this. One of the real benefits of mindfulness practice, whatever it is that it allows you to become more aware of your thought patterns, of the stories that you're telling yourself, of the actions that you're taking, so that you're removing the automaticity. When you're building habits, you're trying to build automaticity, but when you're building mindfulness, you are attempting to remove automaticity where, when and where it's appropriate. And so by removing that automaticity, you're no longer just heading down the default path of doing most of the dishes and leaving a couple undone. You're noticing the urge or the discomfort that you feel when you get to those last couple dishes. You're noticing that you left them there and you're about to walk away. And because you have that awareness, you also now have a choice point available to you that you didn't previously. And you can say to yourself, okay, I want to leave these. I feel uncomfortable. Why do I feel uncomfortable? Oh, am I worried what it might mean if I finish doing all the dishes? Aha, thanks, brain. That's an interesting story you're offering up, but I'm good for now. I think I'm going to finish doing the dishes. And so, because you give yourself that choice point, you have the opportunity to move in a chosen direction that is in a way that's meaningful for you, in a towards direction, a way that moves you closer to your desired future, rather than the default direction or the default path that your current body, your current neurology would have gone with. Okay, so there you have some ideas. A little bit of an abstract topic today, but I hope that it's helpful and resonates with some of you out there. I really appreciate any support you can give me, and take it easy and go earn it. Thanks.